Okay, it's a Clarke Bronco update episode. I don't fucking like that, dude. It's not a fucking show. It's not a show.
It is a show.
No, it's not.
What is it then?
This is a story. I feel like it takes 1 week to fully dust a car. I've told you guys before, I wish we could have, I guess it's something we can make happen, but I'd love to have car covers on every car. I'd love to have like just our logo on the car or our signature. And then when we, if we're not working on these things, each car is covered and we only have them uncovered when we're working on them. And then it would be so nice because it would keep them. And I think the presentation would be like amazing like that, where even when we're filming, we don't see the other cars or the projects, we just like isolate it to the one. All right, welcome back. This is gonna be our Clarke update. I had to backtrack a little bit. We juggle some stuff around in here. So the cool part is, so fuel cell's out. You can see there's a lot of back wall. I don't think that was all there. This is a complete partition sealed area. This is, that whole back wall, and where you see like there will be window openings where there's hardware holes. That stuff is gonna be completely sealed, and then we'll put like a gasket or a weather strip all through the shell. I know we didn't have the shell on, so I'll close this thing so you can get a scope of like what's going on here. We'll leave the pin in there and we'll just bottom this thing out. All right, so we have a proof of concept here. There's a lot of powder coated stuff under the car, but don't worry about that. Proof of concept here, this is short bus 1000. It's really short bus 1000 if you consider where the tailgate is versus the rearmost part of the tire. And that's, again, why we wanted to put the tire swingers and like incorporate them still. It had them before, but we just kind of did a little bit of this and a little bit of that and got them where the approach angle's proper, where there's good angles that are kind of consistent. And I don't mean parallel, I mean like consistent with good design on the back of this thing. And what this does is this incorporates more space, more presence of space, at least to your eyes, so you don't feel like it's a complete short bus. This is kind of where I started with the belt line. Belt line is a automotive term, and it just means like the belt line of the car is where the windows start. You can see on the, like this is a conversion to Raptor, and you can see that the belt line here, or at least the body lines that transfer from the belt line, this stuff is arched. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to develop a bedside back here that just is dictated by the 1996 straight flat styling lens. If we had 96 Bronco up there, which would be awesome, that would be flat, and it would probably even have a flat top bedside. But since it's doing this in the front, we want to make sure that we're doing this in the back to an extent. So this is just something, when I had space and we weren't clogged with more car right here, I was able to stand back and really look and start to figure out what's going on, because ideally, like your highest part of this arch would want to be the center line of the tire, or the highest part of the tire, and we're not going to get that because of what's going on proportionally. So this thing has to be like scooched forward, and I think what we'll get is we'll get a nice mass of space here, but we'll have like big openings. This is going to be a Mario thing for sure. And with that, there's so much space here. It's awesome for like servicing this stuff, but it also gives us an awesome opportunity to detail in like a visual ducting that goes in here. Not so much something where it's a positive shape that pops out of the bedside, but something where it's a negative shape that goes into the bedside and opens this up. So we'll have like a great area here where you can break that up with some kind of opening, so then it doesn't just look like a big chunk of material and a small chunk of material. So this is your full, almost full compression. It looks like there's a 1/2 inch more to go. Still pretty decent. Like, that's just what we did there. Is we used a lot of the frame that was on here, and it's not a factory frame, but it's framework that was already done on carry. And we took this thing as far down as we could before it was just a complete redo, and why are we doing this, blah, blah, blah. So we got quite a bit of up travel from where it was. All proof of concept on the suspension in here. Trailing arms will go and be machine trailing arms instead of these things, just to add to it. The radius arms, we're talking about doing the radius arms too. But really, I think today, let's just kind of, I'll crawl in my little cubby hole on the inside of this thing, and we'll check out the inside. Always got to keep the hole open, because think about having to weld. See this? That has to be everywhere in here on all these seams. Let's cover that really quick. What you'll notice in some of this stuff is there's silicone bronze rod, which is like that gold rod. It feels like I'm in a cave, but it's a very thin material cave. You know what I'm saying? I can hear my voice, but not hear my voice. Like, it's not gonna echo. But it's distracting when you have squirrel type ADHD. There's silicone bronze rod in here, and then there's steel rod. And I've had people ask before, and I wanted to address some of this stuff. Where do you use silicone bronze rod, and where do you use steel rod when you're doing thin wall, or thinner material, sheet metal? And that's a great question, and I've learned that stuff the hard way. When I did at Kibby's, I did all the dash in they call it, what is the Playa Modelo truck or something? It's the black Chevy truck that they finished, and I did all that dash, and I didn't know any better then, and so like a lot of edges where they're butt welded, right? Say you like B-roll the edge, or you roll the edge, and then you have another one that meets it, and you weld that in that butt weld there. The problem with silicone bronze is it doesn't really penetrate. It's not like a structural rod. So when you're bonding two materials, like just the thin steel, you want to be able to penetrate all the way through, because a lot of times when you're doing those corner parts, you're blending that stuff and you're sanding it all flat, and you're going back to the parent material surfaces. So then it's really prone to cracking. If you just look at a silicone bronze weld and you weld it, you'll see like it's not gonna bubble through on the backside and be like a steel weld would. And it's really not the same composition in the metal anyways. So they just don't, it's silicone bronze is something where you have like your thick tubing, which is maybe like 125, or this is probably 9.5. And it's great for welding thin to thick, because silicone bronze, it melts like super fast. It doesn't require a lot of heat to bond to something, and that's why you could almost just call it a glue instead of like a really structural rod. So I feel like I'm taking a long time to explain this, but just take it for what it is. Anytime you have thicker material to thin material, it's tricky if you're using regular rod, because you're going to have to draw so much heat to get the rod to bond that it's going to want to distort the thinner material before it even bonds to the thicker material. So like whenever there's tube to sheet metal, that's a great area for silicone bronze, because it melts fast. It's like a glue. It's soft. It just goes on. You have to kind of have a different technique to apply it, but it's great. Same thing with like welding sheet metal to OEM body stuff where it's 22 gauge or something. It doesn't, you don't want to distort the metal, so you want to just blip, 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 just drizzle that stuff on like a sand castle, like with wet sand, but make it look better and stuff. The areas also, like, you know, you could weld corners if you want. A lot of overlaps you can weld. It's just really, you got to watch the butt welding. Like this area, this is a, you know, this is your top surface, your vertical surface. This would all get steel, and that's what this is over here that's already done. But you know, the other thing I've been doing too is, if you look, you can see that there's silicone tacks, right? Which they have that color to them, that distinct kind of goldish color. And I stopped doing that, and then you can see like I've reverted to this. Is this? Are you able to see this? Okay. This is your steel rod tack, and why I like that is because when you start running big passes of silicone bronze and you have tacks that are silicone bronze, it creates like a speed bump where there's an indifference in the seam of the weld, and you can tell. And you also have to operate differently. Like this is 1 inch spacing, so when I get to like 15/16 or 7/8, I see that thing under my hood, and I know, okay, don't add rod right there because you're gonna have to like melt the stuff that's already there in the tack. And then if you add rod, it's gonna make a speed bump in the weld. And when you do that 20 times, you can see it goes ch, ch, ch. So this is my new life hack on this stuff, and it works well. It's just the steel rod tacking makes it so much smaller that it doesn't do this same deal. So it's just something I've like learned over my experience, and I don't know if that works for everybody, but if you get some value from that, that's great. Okay, so here's where we're at. Third seat, this is going to be open until we're completely welded out and everything's done in here, because this turns into like an incredible shitty thing to have to do if you're doing weird positions. And like right now, I can weld wherever we need to and be good. This is the same stuff I was talking about from the rear of the car. This will all be optical armor, something like that, and that's what Dan referred to me. They use it on a lot of drag cars, and it's very scratch resistant compared to like Lexan, which is what people have used on areas like this for years. This is all drilled out for hardware, and it's prepared just exactly for that. When we are done powder coating this thing, then we'll put clear optical armor in here. You'll have your back window so it doesn't feel closed off. It's important to me on these. And I might have covered it with Carrie before, but it's important to have a partition here. Like with a truck or your pickup style like pre-runner, you have your back window or panel there, and your cab is kind of sealed off, and then you have all of your fuel and your stuff back there that can be pretty dangerous if something happens or if a fire breaks out, and that's the whole thing. So it's just like the front of your car has a firewall. If you have stuff like that there, then the rear of the car should have a firewall, and it makes me nervous building an SUV and then having no partition for the occupants. Like if something goes haywire and you don't even know about it and you're driving and something bursts out, like you want one more thing of protection where you have the chance to get out. This car will have fire suppression, but it's just, this makes sense. And any SUV we build, it's gonna be the same way. That's it. So all this stuff from chassis to shell is aluminum, and it's all modular in here. I think you probably see this better. And this is also something design-wise, I didn't want to just build it like on the walls of the structure, because it's going to get very claustrophobic quickly. Like I wanted to have opening of like, this is all transparent, and like there's spatial winds through here where it's not just like dink, ding, 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 and then you're like in this little cave and feels sketchy. Like when you're already in the third seat and you don't have anything back here, it's not as safe feeling. And I think just being able to see movement and things going by and feeling like just, I think you understand. And opening this just gets like more winds. There's every like area you see here where there's a rectangle with 2 hardware pickups, that's a Baja Designs map light or a service light. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These openings also incorporate that. So 5, 6, 7, 8. We are signed up. Tanner's going to wire this thing with Independence Electric, and we quoted 40 lights on this thing. So we already have quite a few here. Something else we had to add before we get to this front thing is, if you see these little blisters, this was an afterthought. I actually, can you see both of them? So I did the guesstimation on the upper link clearance, and like I should have known how we build stuff. I feel like we always end up building like clearances an 1/8 inch. That's like a running joke around here. Like there's an 1/8 inch between stuff, and it's cool. But like with this, I like just, I didn't have the rear axle housing in here. I didn't have the upper length. So this little detail, which I love how it came out now, is strictly because of that upper link clearance living in here. So it's centered in there. And that's where your links would be doing all that stuff. We will have our pump, our hydraulic pump back here that will be for the jacks that live here. Bluetooth seat living here. And then, you know, what I'd like to, I want to transition into this. So on this build, we talked about running sheet metal and just running it right to the rear of this tube and not doing the rest of the floors. I was like, I'm not gonna do it. We don't need to do it. We can transition. And then looking at all this stuff, Jeff and I both, like, there was so much wasted space, and there's so much, like even the holes we cut where we added more tube structure, we're going to be very tricky to negotiate, which would almost take more time to fill in, because there's the old floors on this thing. This thing's probably 2 or 3 generations of a build. So it's like Dynamat, Line X, Dynamat, Line X, just crusty, old, like thick, heavy, shitty. If you wanted to weld to it, you're cutting layers and layers off, and then you're just going to have patches. So it really made sense to just do the floors. Now what's left is the firewall. And I'm going to commit to the same thing of not doing the firewall. Something to think about here for shapes. This is all going to have a seat mount on top. So really this will be covered. And what these are completely removable. So this comes out, they're just trays. And under there is our exhaust routing, our upper links. Like, you can service stuff, but really this is electronics trays. I'm gonna house all of the electronics under the seats. You won't see it. And then this little like shape change is your heel hold. So when we build out the center console, and obviously like you'd be in a different spot here where you'd be more like this, where it makes sense. That's gonna complement the dead pedal. And there'll be obviously like a smaller driver dead pedal, a big passenger dead pedal, and this will be your third guy in here. So it's just a nice detail to kind of lock in. I built that and took all the dimensions when the seat was in here, so you got like the full hit, and that's like our next step here. So you can kind of see the floors. They're very simple. There's nothing complicated about them. Just tasteful, easy. All of this is built in. This isn't tube. This is all sheet metal that's shrunk and stretched. Everything's just low. And what this is it kind of hugs down to the frame. And so we've gotten a lot more space incorporated into the cabin of this thing than having all that BS like factory stuff that we didn't need. This will be an access panel. Everything else is just going to get welded out. I want to be mindful too, welding this thing, where as much as I'd love to seam weld everything, I don't know if it necessarily needs it, or if we just want to stitch it. And then after it gets back from powder coat, put like 3M body seal on it. It's something to think about. But it's also one of those things, once you start getting into it and welding this stuff, you just fly through it. So it looks like a lot, but if you know, I probably can weld this thing in a day and be good. And I don't, the back probably takes another day. So 2 days worth of welding right there, 20 hours, not terrible. So things to cover in here. Steering column is done, it's fixed. We wanted to go for that. Like some of these cars run the like I Did It style or the hot rod style steering column with an adjuster. Vivian, we had some pretty gnarly L's we took with that thing because it just, it started to lose its integrity. And what I mean by that, even when you just would be driving normal, you had a lot of movement, and you have to think anytime you have a crucial part like that and it has movement and it's not even under a ton of impact or abuse, that turns into an issue when you start off-roading. And for this, we're gonna have adjustable seats, 6-way adjustable seat, and then fixed pedals, fixed steering. That's just how it is, and something you can count on. With next steps in this thing, dash, center console, upper console. We have the cross member and stuff for the front, but that's for another time. Really, the catch up is just to show you guys all the sheet metal here, kind of get a scope of what's been done and what's going to be done. And really it's going to turn into like I'm finishing the T100, all the instrument panel and dash and console on that thing. And then I'll move to this. We're printing out, we're going to 3D print all of the electronics and the switches, just so I can have them. And it's nice to 3D print like a lot of like the keypads and stuff, because then I can sit and tack right next to them and not worry about damaging them, you know, or ruining something, and I don't have to like, you know, tiptoe around that stuff. So this is our Bronco update. Hope you guys enjoyed. Keep you posted.